What's up everybody, Brett here. My YouTube channel is Good Talk Gaming, and I'm bringing you into a new series for our channel. This is going to be based off of a lot of the other series that I see on some of the other Total War, Warhammer 2 YouTube channels, but I'm going to have a slight twist on mine, and that is auto-generated or randomly generated armies. So I was fortunate enough to get into this game with a good group of players who were very sporting and accommodating, and we all agreed to take randomly generated armies with a few stipulations, which I'm going to go over in just a second. I want to say a big shout out to early channel adopter and subscriber and supporter, goes by the name Triari in Total War. This was partly his idea, and he's been suggesting a lot of good series potentially for the channel, and there are a lot of great ideas, and this is one of the ones that I really wanted to do. I love the random aspect of these battles. It forces you to use units that you don't normally take, and to really think on your toes. So I got it in slow-mo here because, you know, when Oregon guns are on the battlefield, things start happening pretty quickly. So we can watch them decimate something while I talk. The parameters are this. You know, you choose your race and you randomly generate your army. You do it one time. You don't, you know, continuously randomly generate until you get an army that suits you. But what I think kind of separates my parameters from the others, from some of the other YouTube channels that I've seen, is that I completely allow taking away of spells. If you're not going to use a spell, it's just wasted gold, and wasted gold is not fun. I mean, you could bring other units to supplement your army and create a more varied, balanced army experience, and I think that makes for ultimately better tactics and a more enjoyable watching experience. So, for instance, you know, I rolled Ark the Black and a Lich Priest with the Lore of Light. They came with all of their spells and abilities. Now, you know, a Lich Priest, the Lore of Light, with all of his abilities is quite expensive. And by cutting mainly just, you know, the spells of Ark the Black and the Lich Priest, I was able to afford 2 Carrion, which were pretty invaluable this game. I was also able to kind of modify our stipulation here by, in further games, because we ended up playing multiple games and they were all very good. Big shout outs to our opponents and our ally here, because I think 2 of them did sub to the channel, so thank you guys for that. Thank you for your support. I ultimately modified the stip to also include being able to take away and add chevrons at will. So no need to be stuck with a group of, you know, spearmen that have not rank 9, you know, chevrons on them. That's just ridiculous. Kind of the same thing with the spells. Yeah, try and spread your chevrons out how you want. So that's basically how this goes. So before things get too crazy, let me go ahead and get into our army comp. I have a nice front line of Tomb Guard. I was pretty happy to get those guys. They do have their shields, silver shields, which if I was going to be facing up against the Vampire Coast, I would expect to really need those silver shields. So I have a mix, 2 of those standard Tomb Guards with the Nakaran Warriors in the center, to help me chop down the Saurus. 1 of the Tomb Guards with halberds out on the flanks, hoping to try and deny these chameleon skinks the opportunity to go up and around and harass me in that way. I have for my kind of, you know, cavalry contingent, skeleton horsemen, very cheap. They are shielded as well. I'm going to try and use them to help chase down the chameleon skinks in conjunction with the carrion, who are essentially like large undead buzzards. And my Necropolis Knights, which I'm going to hold them a bit in reserve. They're quite expensive, and they're a very potent unit. And for those of you who've never seen them before, they are awesome looking unit models. They're essentially like Tomb Guard riding on top of Necro Serpents, and they're just awesome. And I'm going to try and use them to kind of help out my Dwarven ally, because he does have all of our ranged units, and we need to really protect him in this upcoming battle, I think, if we're going to have any chance of winning. I also have the Blessed Legion of Demonetization, as they're referred to, because saying that word is often very easily misconstrued as the F word. And these guys are great. With their armor sundering, they're able to do a ton of armor-piercing damage. They have a lot of models. Unfortunately, we didn't get any other range units to use in conjunction with them, so they're going to be very hard to protect, and they're going to be very difficult to make very efficient here. I also have a Tomb Scorpion. This is an awesome unit for those of you who've never seen him. You can actually see an undead guy mummified on its back. And they have awesome armor-piercing anti-infantry. They cause terror. And they have very unique animations that make them extremely hard to tie down in melee combat, as well as the big kitty himself, the Khmrian War Sphinx, with the tomb guards on the back shooting off their archery. And great anti-infantry, very mobile. Not the best against the current build that I'm up against. There are a lot of Saurus spears on the other side of the battlefield, and just a lot of big dinos. Not a lot of great targets for a Khmrian War Sphinx. I honestly maybe should have taken it to the other side of the battlefield, but I was very scared of the gunpowder units, and I thought my Dwarven ally was perhaps better suited to taking that style of combat. Arkan the Black here, I have him well stripped down to only include the Spirit Leech as his spell. Of course, I took the Tomb Blade of Arkan to allow him to summon lots of skeleton units, and the Staff of Nagash, which is going to act as a bit of a Winds of Magic battery for my Lich Priest with the Lore of Light, who I'm going to be relying on more heavily for my my damage output magic-wise. Because on him, Exorcism is great, lowering the leadership map-wide of undead, so that's going to help my Dwarven ally every time I cast. And he also has Shim's Burning Gaze, which is great against the undead as well, with its fire and magical damage. The Net of Amnitok to try and tie down fast-moving targets, any kind of threat, and I'm going to make pretty great use of this game. And Banishment, which I took just in case I saw a great blobbing opportunity. And honestly, I'm about to make a pretty good play here. I may honestly just want to pause this, because stuff is going down on this side of the battlefield. Our opponents, it's not often you see a build with the Vampire Coast where they feel the need to rush their opponents. It's normally they're the type of race that gets to sit back. But I'm about to make a pretty great play here with the Skink Priest with the Lore of Heavens. I'm going to try to net it down, shoot it with a Shim's Burning Gaze, and then get it also with a Spirit Leech. All of that in conjunction does a ton of damage to the Skink Priest on his Pterodon. And as I kind of mentioned, I already went over their infantry components, but these two Bastiladons here end up, being able to do a lot of work versus Tomb Guard. That's an opponent that they're very well suited to fighting, as well as these two Bastiladons with the solar engines caused no end of problems to us this game. We didn't have adequate tools to get onto them and to take them down, despite trying to, and they're going to end up posting up on this lip here. And that's going to give them an excellent firing arc into our units. And they do fire and magical damage, which absolutely decimates the Tomb Kings. Anything that they shoot at, they're going to do a ton of damage. And for his Lord, he did get a Saurus Old Blood on top of a feral dude here. I guess he's not feral if he's been tamed. But there we go. And that's pretty much their army. Very simple. The Chameleon Skinks obviously out on the flanks are going to be pretty bothersome, considering that we don't have the ranged components necessary to kind of counter skirmish them away. The Dwarves had a great front line of Dwarf Warriors. That's 3 units there, and some miners out on the side. So that's going to be, they're very spread out, they're very forward advanced, and they're there to take fire and to engage all of the chaff units that the Vampire Coast player had. They kept a unit of Dwarf Hammers in reserve. Actually, these are the Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. What was I thinking? Where are the hammers? There they are. In reserve, and that's a good option. They're, of course, going to be the subject of mortar fire. Very high value target. But when these guys get into melee with something, they decimate it. It really doesn't matter what it is. Some Rangers here in the background. Definitely want to keep them well protected. Help them to skirmish away these Fellbats. And oh my god, I didn't even see these. The Night Terrors, the Regiment of Renown Mourngul unit. Absolutely devastating against the dwarfs. Perhaps one of the best anti-dwarf units in the game. And he's going to have to do a lot of focusing to get rid of these guys, because they do heal whenever they are in combat. And I think there's something special about these Regiments of Renown. Let's see if we can hover over them and take a look at what it is. It's kind of hard to get them when they're already entangled up in melee. There we go. So they have the hunger. That's what heals them in melee. And they cause terror. There's something different about them. I think maybe they just have a better stock, perhaps. They have a 30% missile resistance, so the Rangers aren't going to be at their most effective against them, but they're super heavy armor piercing, great anti-infantry. The Dwarves really stand no chance against this unit when they're well supported with Fellbats or something like that mixed in. Gyrocopters are on the field, guys. Multiple gyrocopters. This is the gyrocopter with the brimstone gun. Great anti-large. I thought there were 2 of them. I'm not quite seeing the second. Hopefully they didn't get shot down already, because that would be awful. They're up against the deck droppers with bombers, and these guys are almost never taken in the meta. You always see the handgun variant, but they actually could have a home against the dwarves. They're anti-infantry, and if the dwarves don't have the range necessary to skirmish them out of the sky, then they could end up doing a ton of damage to them. The Iron Drake Trollhammer torpedoes are going to be a beautiful anti-large tool for the dwarves. They also just have incredible armor piercing. So anything they shoot at dies, essentially, any large target, and they're going to have a field day there. Multiple Iron Drakes on the field. That's one of them. I think there's another. I could have sworn there was another, but perhaps not. But the way they were initially engaged or lined up for the dwarves, I thought was brilliant. He basically just put them onto the front lines. And you do that, they get their opening volley into the advancing enemy, and then you send forward your infantry and hold them in reserve to find gaps in which they can shoot. This map has a ton of terrain, so they shouldn't be all that obstructed as the battle engages. And Slayers in reserve, great choice to help fight back any sort of large targets. And another group of hammers sitting directly on top of the organ gun should be able to help protect it from flying units, keeping them firing at all times. And of course, Thorgrim the man himself, the dwarf. Ooh, that's a grudge, and I called him a man. He is a dwarf. He's a Dawi High King, and he has his Oath of Vengeance to debuff, as well as Stand Your Ground to buff his allies' leadership and melee defense. And also the High King. If he drops below 50% HP, we get a map-wide buff for weapon damage, charge bonus, melee attack, and immune to psychology. And that applies to me as well. So that's a pretty sweet buff. Immune to psychology, not so valuable, but the rest of those are quite valuable. And last but not least, let's go over quickly. I know you guys want to get into the action, but I want to talk tactics. I want to talk units. And there's a lot of zombie pirate deckhand mobs on the field, absorbing lots of fire and lots of the dwarf aggression here. But there's also the Tide of Skjold, which is a pretty cool unit. You don't get to see a ton. I think they're honestly pretty competitive. 160 unit size there for them. Decent melee stats, and with Rowdy, they have perfect vigor and honestly great leadership. Considering they're a regiment of renown with Rowdy, they're very hard to break. They also cause fear, which is relevant against the dwarf warriors. They have the Black Spot here, I hate these names, zombie pirate gunnery mob with handguns, right? And they are essentially just better in melee. They have anti-large and charge defense against large. Not relevant against the dwarves, unfortunately for them, but still, they're a great unit. They have good armor-piercing damage as well. Double mortars back here, being buffed by the gunnery white. Very cool. Enhanced ballistics giving them great accuracy and reload. The gunnery white was a great pickup for a random army with two mortars in it. That's going to allow them to do tons of damage here. We can kind of slow-mo it a bit better and watch them just absolutely devastate the hammers. With that increased accuracy, they're going to get much tighter groupings, and you'll see there the dwarf warriors with great weapons get absolutely pounded, and they take a lot of HP damage and lose a few models as well. And a couple of these zombie pirate gunnery mobs held in reserve, and a bloated corpse. Let's see if he'll be able to make use of that. Hopefully we catch it, whether it fails or does well. And then you've probably seen these dudes firing for the entirety of the opening of this battle. The Shade Wraith Gunners, who deal magic damage, which is not great against the dwarves. It's actually a hindrance because the dwarves have a passive magic resistance. But they themselves are ethereal, so they have that 75% physical resistance, so they're very hard to skirmish out traditionally. You almost need magic to take them down. They cause fear, as most units of the Vampire Coast do, and they also have Discourage, so they hit you with armor-piercing damage that also causes a leadership penalty. Honestly, these guys would be great, absolutely amazing if they were firing at me. And here you'll see the Net of Amnitok going off, as I mentioned, and I think that's about it. Count Noctilus is definitely worth going over very quickly before we get too deep into this battle. Count Noctilus is an amazing lore choice on foot. He's got armor-piercing, great against the dwarves. His anti-large, not relevant. But he does have Captain Ross Moondial to let him summon more units, which you'll see here he is. That may not be from the Moondial, though. That may be just from his ability to summon, which he probably has Drown Dead, yes. So he can summon tons and tons of units. Invocation of Nehek for heals, and the Withering, rather, as a great spell for him to use. But he's going to try and shut down these Iron Drakes, and I don't blame him. Spirit Leech should be going off soon. I've got my archers firing. I think we missed, perhaps, the Shem's Burning Gaze. Smacked him in the face. But now that we're in full speed, let's see if we can get a great shot of the battlefield. I'm trying to help get rid of these skinks. I've sent my Carrion to harass them, and my Skeleton Horsemen were going to be sent, but he was trying to screen us out with these Saurus Warriors with spears. And on the advance, we're going to take lots of Bastillodon fire, and that feels pretty bad. But we're able to pretty well snipe down the Skink Priest, and our opponent here is going to perhaps slightly miss-micro him. Should probably be pulling him back at this point, but we're going to get a lot of free damage off. Keeping Archon and my Lich Priest a bit in reserve. Want to see where he commits his Saurus Old Blood, because it's quite the threat to us. The Iron Drakes are roasting the backs of these zombie pirate deckhand mobs, and I was very happy that we had a home here for our Blessed Legion. And there we go, another Shem's Burning Gaze, and that's going to rout off the Skink Priest. So no magic for him. Ooh, and the Iron Drakes are absolutely crushing these deck droppers. I love to see that. The Dwarf Warriors with great weapons took way too much artillery fire. The hammers still haven't quite been committed yet. And, what's the name of this spell? Sorry guys, I forget the name of that spell, but it's from Count Noctilus, and it does pretty great damage there. Probably would much rather prefer to use it on a blob. Try to find a large target in the midst of a blob and see how much collateral damage you can get out of that. We've got our Tomb Guards with halberds engaged on this Feral Bastillodon. That's a great target for them. And we kind of juke one of those Bastillodon shots there. We want all of our things on appropriate targets. Our Tomb Scorpion is onto the Saurus Warriors, who don't have a good way to deal with the Scorpion. And Archon was taking a beating there from the Saurus Old Blood, so I'm having to run. And I have to run to my nearest units to try and force him to get tied down just for a bit. And I summoned a group of Skeleton Warriors here to help my Tomb Scorpion fight those Saurus. I'm sending off my Skeleton Spearmen to help reinforce my Dwarven ally. I don't want him to lose his back line. These organ guns are super valuable. 182 kills already. The Bolt Thrower, actually, which I think I forgot to go over, is going to be firing for most of the battle as well. My Carrion are still doing a great job of tying down the Skinks. A Chain Lightning going off from our opponent here, but it's going to somewhat whiff. It probably did a decent amount of damage to the Tomb Guard on its initial cast, but then as it moved, it became less and less value. Thorgrim is being committed here against Count Noctilus, and if it wasn't for these Iron Drakes firing point blank, I think Count Noctilus would be doing quite well. He's also got the Oath of Vengeance on him, so he's going to be taking extra damage from all these hammers, and the Iron Drakes are being moved forward, hopefully to deal with these Shade Wraith Gunners, because they are an absolute terror. The deck droppers are also still in the battlefield doing their work, and lots of summons means it's going to be very difficult for these artilleries to get their fire off. Dwarf Warriors perhaps should come down here and help, as well as the Rangers. I'm sure my ally will micro them effectively in just a bit. And I had to flee with Archon. I was using him to chase off this Feral Bastillodon, but I decided to bring him back for casting purposes, and I'm trying to keep my Tomb Guards onto the Saurus Old Blood, or at least to mirror him. I summoned my Ushabti in the back line to stop the firing of these Bastillodons, because they were absolutely devastating me, and I was worried that they would get in and amongst... Well, not in and amongst, that's perhaps the wrong thing to say, but I was worried they would start firing on something like my Cimmerian War Sphinx, which is such a huge target that I can't really adequately protect him in melee. My Lich Priest is getting up into the battle. I really want to get Archon into some sort of easy melee combat, because if I don't do that, I'm not recharging my Tomb Blade, and I have 5 uses of this, and I think I've only gotten off 1 of them so far. So I'm going to very quickly here choose an easy target and try and put Archon in there. You see, there you go. I micro them pretty much. My memory's on point. I'm happy to see that. He's going to get into melee and start recharging that Tomb Blade so we can get more and more skeleton summons. I think that's it for my Carrion. They are off the battlefield, and I think my Skeleton Horsemen as well. We did some damage to them, but really the idea was to weaken them and to run out their ammunition, and they did just that. The Carrion are super cheap at 350, and yeah, they did their job. Cimmerian War Sphinx and Tomb Scorpion just going to work. See if we can catch one of the Tomb Scorpion's more unique animations there. He does the thing where he skewers people with his tail. It's pretty brutal to watch. Such a fierce unit. And the Ushabti are not going to do great damage against the Bastiladons, but they do have good armor piercing, so I was hoping maybe to take out one of them. But ultimately sending over our units to help our ally proved to be very effective, because our Necropolis Knights were able to get in and amongst, man, what were the name of these guys? Anyway, get in amongst these deck droppers, these ethereal deck droppers, and do lots of damage. But now I've kind of slightly mismicroed them. I'm going to be moving them in just a second. I've got my spearmen here. We're crushing the gunnery mobs, and in just a moment I'll move in my Necropolis Knights to fight something. We pushed back the artillery, and the dwarf player is able to kind of rally and protect his most valuable assets. The organ gun will get back online, I'm sure, in just a second. The Khmerian War Sphinx going toe-to-toe with a Feral Bastiladon, and while neither one of them is meant to fight the other, the Khmerian War Sphinx does have a distinct advantage, for sure. So now, the Saurus Oldblood going after my vulnerable Tomb Scorpion, that's a great target for him. He'll be able to win that fight handily. Some summoned skeleton warriors, there's 200 of these guys in a group on Ultra, and they'll be able to hold back these Saurus for quite some time. And we're going to send in our Tomb Guard with halberds to keep fighting. Khmerian War Sphinx being recommitted. The Iron Drakes with torpedoes here, going to be devastating this Feral Bastiladon and taking him out. And every miss was probably going into a Saurus Spear. And I want to keep my Arc in the Black in combat. I'm using the Liber Mortis you saw there for a second. It gives 44% physical resistance in an AoE, and I've been using that on my front line throughout this battle. And yeah, these dang solar engines are still online. Count Nautilus is going toe-to-toe with Thorgrim, but Thorgrim's getting the better of him. Even with Foe Seeker and Stand Your Ground, those are pretty significant buffs for him. And Count Nautilus goes down. My Necropolis Knights are in here, in the thick of it.
Get away from these lands!
Trying to quickly rout and disintegrate all of the undead units on the battlefield. That way we can more easily focus on the Lizardman player. In a moment here, I think I end up realizing that they're no longer fighting anyone. Wow, he threw that fruit bomb at us. Did that actually kill a model? I don't know, but it looked really cool. And we're going to send the Necropolis Knights to go and try and deal with this gunnery wight. They're more anti-infantry focused, armor piercing focused. They're not the best against the gunnery wight, but they should be able to do quite a bit of work. And my skeleton spearmen are still just, running through guys. 44 kills for skeleton spearmen is quite nice, and the organ gun, our saving grace, back online, helping us to take out these solar engines. And I'm trying to help him. I've had my Khmerian War Sphinx on one of the Bastiladons, but I didn't want to get in the way of the organ gun fire, which is super high armor piercing damage. And if I was standing here fighting in melee, there's a good chance I would end up getting shot in the back with my War Sphinx, and that's not what I wanted to happen. At this point, I'm motioning to my ally to retreat with these Iron Drakes, and we'll regroup maybe on this lip here to protect what's left of our artillery, the bolt thrower, and perhaps regroup. I sent in my my Tomb Guard with halberd, and they were in this battle right here. They got overwhelmed, but they bought us a lot of time to retreat. And the Lizardman player still has a lot of assets, still has a lot of monsters on the battlefield, and his Chameleon Skinks are mostly out of ammunition. So the Iron Drakes end up routing, but we're going to try and save them if we can. I think we can. You'll see there, big fire coming in from what's left of the Bastiladon's ammunition. Only one shot left, but there was probably even, honestly, more friendly fire than could hit the dwarves. And there we go. The Khmerian War Sphinx has no problem killing Chameleon Skinks. They even fight like a giant cat. You gotta love it. We only have 10 of them left, but they're so heavily armored, and they have such great leadership as dwarves, that if they get near their High King, I have no doubt that they will come back. Thorgrim, I guess he's not at half health, because the High King is not procced. He's attempting to chase down the Saurus Oldblood, and I think in a moment here I'm going to get in with my my spearmen. And I kind of gave up on killing this gunnery wight. It was taking forever. And I decided to use my Necropolis Knights to try and harass the Bastiladon. It didn't quite work either. So I'm going to send them into here to try and surround the Saurus Oldblood. I used my Lich Priest, who doesn't really have any magic anymore, to tie down the model of the Saurus, because it is a large target. It makes it hard for them to run, which allows the Slayers to catch up and my Necropolis Knights to get in and ultimately bully them very well. So now, Dwarf Warriors with great weapons being committed, hammers being committed to help back up the Khmerian War Sphinx. He just needs a little bit of infantry to help him fight effectively so he doesn't get completely surrounded. And here comes the Troll Hammer torpedoes from 10 unit models. And they're going to be absolutely devastating. You can watch them fire. Super fun. Yeah, you gotta love that. Lich Priest here. Ark in the Black not in the best position health-wise. And also I'm trying to keep him in melee so that I can get another skeleton summons. Because I think that'll be kind of the nail in the coffin for this battle. Thorgrim here trying to get onto the Saurus Oldblood. He gives him the Oath of Vengeance. But when that happens, he just runs away, which is pretty smart from our opponent. And he's going to rear charge these Dwarf Warriors with great weapons. That may even cause them to break. It was more of a flank charge, but yeah, it's pretty brutal when they're at this low of HP. And at this point, we get another Skeleton Warrior summoned. Very good, and we can use them to meat shield for us in this battle against the Saurus. And at this point, we commit our Necropolis Knights. It's not the best combat for them because they are against spears, but it should be okay. And at this point, I realize, oh my god, I left Ark in the Black vulnerable to the Saurus Oldblood. With Stand Your Ground, Foe Seeker, he's very fast, he's very tanky, and melee. So standing and fighting is not an option, even though Ark in the Black does have 450 weapon strength, which is kind of absurd. So point blank Iron Drake shots here. Going to be devastating the Oldblood, and he realizes he needs to get the heck out of there. And let's see if he ever goes home. The Papa Mazdamundi. Oh god, and down he goes. Fierce opponent there. But the Iron Drakes, keeping them alive, trying to protect them, myself and my ally doing a great job. Kept them in the battle. Look, they have no HP left. That's like sub 10% HP, and they were able to have such a huge impact there at the end of the game. You gotta love it. So great play there from all of our opponents and our allies. Thank you again, guys, for your subs. I appreciate it a lot. It's nice of you to go and check out the channel, and I hope you enjoy the type of content that I make. And for those of you watching at home right now, if you haven't subbed, please consider doing it. I put out a lot of Total War Warhammer 2 content. I'm looking to do even more. I'm waiting for the game to kind of be updated and upgraded. More DLC for me would be great. But good play. Just honestly great play. Making the most of these autogen armies. Oh, we missed the bloated corpse. Oh my god, I'm going to be kicking myself forever for that. Hopefully you guys got to see it in the background maybe. But 60 kills is no joke. It must have gone off into some Dwarf Warriors or something. These miners, yeah, it might have just went into these miners and crushed them. 0 kills. Yeah, that feels pretty bad. But yeah, making the most of these armies was definitely the challenge and the fun behind this. See, the Bastiladons were just absolute terrors this battle. The Saurus were able to rack up a lot of kills versus our skeletons. Honestly, not a bad build against us, but with some support from the Dwarf player, we were able to overcome. And honestly, man, look at the kills. Just the sheer kills on some of these units. Slayers, chevroned up Slayers. Absolute beast. And a 216 organ gun kill game. That's fun. And there was only one gyrocopter on the battlefield. I could have sworn there were 2. But we did end up playing multiple games. Maybe I'm getting a little bit confused. Not a lot of kills on them. But then again, the Vampire Coast player basically stuck the Shade Wraith Gunners on them for like the entire time that they existed. And that was able to tie them down pretty effectively. Yeah, the Gunnery Wight got a lot of kills, and he helped these mortars really live up to their potential. And if we look at our kills, how they ended up spreading out, we were very versatile with our Necropolis Knights, and we had to throw away, our Horsemen plus our Carrion just to keep all of these Chameleon Skinks off of us for the majority of the game until they essentially ran out of ammunition. And though the Blessed Legion did not get a lot of kills, we were able to really minimize the effectiveness of the Skink Priest as a source of leadership and winds of magic for our opponents. And I liked our choices of spells. I was in Discord with my friend Triari, and we were talking about which spells to take, and we were going over it. And ultimately, we kind of settled on the strategy of stripping down Arkan, using him as a bit of a mana battery, so to speak, and then really utilizing the Lich Priest's spell casting, thanks to its exorcism, being able to weaken the leadership of the Vampire Coast, and also, you know, having a bit of a sniping kit between Spirit Leech and Shim's Burning Gaze and Net of Amatoch. So that ended up being very fun. I love the tactics that were used. I love the units that got used. Things you don't get to see every day. Trollhammer torpedoes and Iron Drakes, for God's sakes, as well as, you know, these deck droppers with bombs. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. Once again, my name is Brett. My channel is Good Talk Gaming. If you like the video, give me a thumbs up. I appreciate it. That helps my video get seen by more people. And yeah, ultimately will hopefully help my channel to grow. So thank you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.